All right. Thanks everyone for coming to join us for the Make a Plan to Vote Q&A hosted by Change Illinois. My name is Ryan Tully. I'm the Policy Director with Change Illinois. I'm really excited for you to be here with us tonight. We typically don't do a lot of events, so this is the first we're doing in order to make sure that voters are prepared and that you have your questions answered before going to vote this November. So whether that's early voting, vote by mail, or on election day, we want to make sure you have the information you need coming up. So a little bit about Change Illinois is we're a nonpartisan nonprofit. We mostly focus on elections and ethical government. We've been longtime advocates for independent redistricting, but here tonight we're going to focus on our voting efforts. We've this past year worked a lot on the new laws that were adopted for the 2020 election. And we'll go over some of those changes just so you're aware of some of the new things for you. What we'll be talking about tonight is a recap of the new law changes, your options for safe voting, steps for vote by mail, and then we'll answer your questions that you submitted. Some of those questions we got were a little duplicative, so we may have consolidated a few questions into one, but you can leave a comment in the chat if you still have questions, and we can circle back at the end to make sure you get those questions answered. So some of the questions submitted to us tonight. What should I do if my vote by mail ballot is damaged? Can I still vote in person if I've already requested a vote by mail ballot? I haven't registered to vote yet. Can I still vote? What information do I need for voting in person? What is a provisional ballot and when does someone use it? What happens if I made an error on my ballot? Will we know the results of who won on election night? I've heard that vote by mail is more susceptible to fraud. Is that true? How do I know if my ballot was received or not? If I'm returning a vote by mail ballot, do I need to wait in line in person? What is the difference between a poll worker and a poll watcher? Why am I not able to vote or not able to vote to or not to retain a judge up for retention? Can I take pictures of my ballot? And does my employer have to give me time off to go vote on election day? So those are the questions we'll get into later in this event. And first, we want to start out with the new laws for 2020. There have been some changes for vote by mail. And in this election, there have been over 2 million vote by mail ballots requested, which is a very large number compared to the 2018, 2016 elections. So there's a lot of voters out there that are going to be using vote by mail for the first time. So some of the changes in the new law focused on who would get an application to vote by mail. So if you cast a ballot, voted in the 2018 general election or any election since then, so that would include the 2019 elections on municipal level and also the 2020 primary, you should have already gotten an application to vote by mail. Also, if you've updated your voter registration or registered to vote between the 2020 primary election and July 31st, 2020, you would have also received an application. You would still need to submit that application in order to get your vote by mail ballot, but that application piece would automatically come to you. Another change that was a part of the new law is that voters can request a vote by mail ballot online from the Illinois State Board of Election. Now, depending on which election jurisdiction you live in, you may have a slightly different experience. If you're in Chicago, you will be directed to a page where you can apply for that ballot online. Some other local jurisdictions, you will have to print out a paper form and mail that into your local election authority. But it is nice having the centralized location. You just go in and click where you are located, and they help direct you to the correct process. Also, starting October 1st, vote by mail ballots are being mailed to voters within 2 days of the election authority getting their application. So that hopefully will result in a quicker turnaround time from the time you submitting your application to actually getting your vote by mail ballot. So if you still have not even applied for a vote by mail ballot, it's not too late. You can still do that. And then the last thing is how vote by mail ballots are reviewed. So this year, a change established a 3-person panel with no more than 2 people from the same political party. And all judges must agree to throw out a ballot in order for it to be deemed invalid. And really what that means is for things like signature mismatch, for signing in the wrong place, or not fully sealing your envelope, small things, technicalities like that voters are seeing their ballots tossed out for. All 3 members need to agree. There's other things if they have 2 ballots from the same voter, those aren't things that they can say that they're going to say we'll still accept the results. But for small technical issues that voters have been disenfranchised for in the past, it takes all 3 to agree to that. And then going on, and then really next, want to get into what your options are for this coming election. So there are 3 options for you. You can either vote by mail, which you can still continue to request applications until October 29th, 2020. The only thing you need to watch out for is the ballots must be postmarked by election day, November 3rd, 2020, in order to be counted. So the election authority can receive the ballot after the 3rd and still be counted for up to 14 days after the election, but it does need to be postmarked on November 3rd in order for it to count. Your next option as a voter is early voting. We are past October 19th, so all early voting locations across the state are now available. If you wondering where your early voting locations are, you can contact your local election authority or online at the State Board of Elections website. You can use the location closest to you. Just make sure that location is in your election jurisdiction, but otherwise you're good to go. And then all early voting locations are required to be open at a minimum from 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekends and holidays. And then the last option that is available for voters is Election Day on November 3rd. The polling locations will be posted at the State Board of Elections website. But if you can't take advantage of vote by mail, you can't take advantage of early voting, November 3rd is still an option to you. And next, as I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot more voters that will be presumably voting by mail this year. And so we really wanted to break down the steps you should take in order to make sure that your ballot is going to be counted this November. So really the first thing that is extremely important for everyone to do is to read the instructions that come with your vote by mail ballot. Make sure you review all the instructions when you get the ballot before you start marking your choices. And with that, you'll want to use a blue or black ink pen to fill out your ballot. Don't use colors like red, yellow, green, orange. And also you want to make sure you use a pen, an ink pen. Do not use a Sharpie, marker, highlighter. All those things bleed through the ballots. And when they try to run them through the machines, the machine can't figure out who you were choosing for your candidate. So blue or black ink pen only for filling out your ballot. And then when you're filling out your ballot, make sure you fill out the circle, just fill in the circle completely. Don't mark it with an X or a check mark. Those as well, the machines have trouble registering that. So you're just going to want to fill the circle in beside the candidate you're choosing. And then after completing the ballot, you'll want to return it back in the envelope provided to you. You do not want to grab an envelope you had laying around the house. You need to use that certified envelope that was given to you by the election authority. On that envelope, you need to certify the ballot. You need to print your name and address on it, indicate how many years and months you've lived at that address, and then you're going to sign and date it. You need to fill out all those steps on the outside, and then you're going to make sure you seal that ballot. Um, a question we get a lot too is, I don't know what my signature looks like. And some good rules of thumb are to say it should match the signature on your driver's license or the signature you provided when you registered to vote if it wasn't at the same time you got your license. You can check how the ballot was addressed to you as well and try to match that as closely as possible. I know at least in Chicago, you can go on and update your signature online. So that's an option for Chicago voters who are wondering if their signature still matches the one they used when they originally registered. And then other steps to take is to make sure your ballot postage has been paid. In some election jurisdictions, it will be prepaid and you don't need to buy postage. But if not, you'll want to make sure you put the correct postage on your ballot. It usually costs about $1.40 according to the Illinois State Board of Elections. The USPS, United States Postal Service, has said that they will still accept them if it's under postage, but you just want to make sure, so go ahead and get the correct postage, and that way you don't have to be concerned on whether your ballot's going to make it to its final destination or not. If you're designating someone to deliver your ballot for you, you're going to need to fill out the backside of the envelope by putting your name, the name of the person that you're authorizing to take your ballot for you, which is also known as an authorized agent. And both you and that person must sign that section. And so again, that will be right there on the back of your ballot. And then if you're unable to mark your ballot due to physical incapacity and receive help, there's a section on the top left corner of your ballot to indicate that person's name and address. So if you did need help filling out your ballot because you aren't able to physically, just make sure you fill out that information as well. And then double check and make sure you followed all the directions that were included, and then you'll be good to go. And then also just make sure you return that via United States Postal Service, or if available, a secure drop box provided by your local election authority. I know those aren't available in every state. So again, you'll want to go to the State Board of Elections website. They have a nice tool where it shows you if drop boxes are available to you. So just make sure to check and see if that's an option. If it is, it's super simple, easy way to just drop it in. If not, make sure you use USPS. Don't FedEx it. Don't send it through UPS. Make sure you're using the United States Postal Service. The next segment we're going to go through are the questions that were submitted to us in advance. So we did a quick run through of those, but here we'll go a little more in depth. So what should I do if my vote by mail ballot is damaged? This was actually something that happened to me. I am unfortunate enough that my mailbox hangs just past the awning at my building. So every time it rains, my mail gets soaked. So if that happens to you, or if you spill a drink on your ballot, don't try to fill out the damaged ballot and mail it in. What you're going to want to do is either contact your local election authority to get a replacement ballot sent to you, or you're going to take that damaged ballot with you to in-person voting location, surrender the ballot, and then be able to vote in person. When you do that, it's a really simple process. You'll give them a ballot and they will give you your ballot back, or a new ballot to cast your vote on. You do not use a provisional ballot in that case. We'll go to the question later in the segment and talk about when provisional ballots are and are not supposed to be used. But in this circumstance, when you have the ballot with you, you do not need to use a provisional ballot. The next question we had was, can I still vote in person if I already requested a vote by mail ballot? And that gets to a little bit to the question we had before, but the simple answer is yes. I know a lot of folks early on were requesting vote by mail ballots. You may be at a point now where you say, you know what, I'd rather vote in person. So as we discussed before, if your ballot's damaged, if you've already received your vote by mail ballot, make sure just to take it with you. It's going to make your life much more simple. Again, you'll surrender that ballot and the poll worker will give you a new one. If you've not received your vote by mail ballot, that's okay too. You will have to go into your polling location and sign an affidavit swearing that you haven't received a ballot, and then you'll be given a new ballot to cast your vote. And even if you don't have your ballot with you, do not use a provisional ballot when voting. You should be given a regular ballot to cast your vote on. Um, the next question we have is, I haven't registered to vote yet. Can I still vote? Then yes, online voter registration ended on October 18th, but you still have other options. Illinois is a state where we have same-day voter registration. So you can take advantage of same-day registration either during early voting or on election day. So it's a pretty simple process. I've done it before. All you'll need to do is bring in 2 forms of identification, one that has your name and current address on it. If you don't have a state driver's license or ID, then you can use other documents as ID, such as a utility bill, bank statement, paycheck, a college ID, or current rental lease. So even if you don't have a driver's license, don't let that stop you from going in and making sure you're registered. And don't let it stop you that online voter registration has ended. It really doesn't add that much more time to your day for you to go in and register and use the same day registration. What information do I need for in-person voting? If you're voting in person and have already registered, then you don't have to prove who you are. You're not required to show a driver's license or state ID. If you are not registered, as we talked before, you will need 2 forms of identification, and the one that shows your current address. Next question we had is, what is a provisional ballot and when does someone use it? And so provisional voting allows someone to vote on election day, even if their ability to vote has been questioned by a poll worker or election judge. So provisional ballots are kept separate from other ballots. They require verification by the election authority. In some circumstances where a provisional ballot might be used is if the election judge has no record of the individual at that precinct, a voter's status has been successfully challenged, a court orders the extends the time for closing the polls, or the voter's name appears on a list of voters who have already voted during early voting. So if one of those things happen to you, you may have to vote on a provisional ballot. But as we discussed before, if you're a voter changing your mind about vote by mail and you want to vote in person and still have your ballot, those are not cases where you need to use a provisional ballot. What happens if I made an error on my ballot? So if your signature doesn't match, if you forget to seal your envelope, things like that, your local election authority is required to notify you within 2 days of the error. If they find the error on or after election day, they must notify you within 24 hours. In Illinois, we have a cure process, which means any person has the right to correct errors on their ballot. And as I was saying, signature mismatch, not properly sealing the envelope, or signing the return envelope on the wrong spot could all be things that you can cure in Illinois if those problems come up. Next question we had was, will we know the results of who won on election night? And it's possible that we won't know the results of the election on election night, and that's okay. For counting ballots, accuracy is always more important than speed. And a big part of this is we want to make sure everyone is counted who voted. And this really isn't nothing new either. So for many down the ballot races on local levels, there's not a clear winner on election night because of the tight margins of the race. They have to wait for all the absentee ballots to be counted. So in Illinois, they can count ballots up to 14 days after the election. And for folks who are voting by mail, their ballots might not get in until 3, 4, 5, 6 days after election day. And as we talked about earlier, Illinois is experiencing, and many other states are, a higher number of folks who are requesting vote by mail ballots. And it's likely going to take longer to tally the results and have a clear picture of who won on election night. I mean, it's a process to certify and count all these vote by mail ballots. One of the ways I like to think about it is trying to imagine opening thousands and hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail. That task in of itself is going to take them a long time to do, not to mention all the other processes in order to certify these ballots that they're receiving. How do I know if my ballot was received or not? So the easiest way for you to check on the status of your ballot is to check with your local election authority. You can find out the information to contact them on the Illinois State Board of Elections website if you don't already have it. But they should be able to tell you if they've received your ballot, if there's issues with your ballot, or if it's still in transit in the hands of USPS. So contact them and they should be able to help you sort out where you are in getting your ballot processed or not. If I'm returning a vote by mail ballot, do I need to wait wait in line? So this is for voters going in person to drop off their vote by mail ballots at a drop box. And so, no, if you're returning your vote by mail ballot to a drop box, you do not need to wait in line with people waiting to vote in person. You can skip the line, put your ballot in a secure drop box, and you're done. But again, you don't have to wait with all the folks that are doing early voting. Next question we got is, what is the difference between a poll worker and poll watcher? So poll workers are people who are hired and paid in Illinois by local election authorities. Their primary responsibilities are opening and closing polling locations, setting up equipment, providing assistance to voters, verifying voters' qualifications, distributing ballots, certifying vote totals, and other election operations. These folks are, again, hired to do these positions by the local election authority. Then on the other hand, what you may see sometimes at your polling location is a poll watcher, and those are volunteers who can either be appointed by a political party, a candidate for office, or a nonpartisan civic organization. They are given credentials by the local election authority, but there's limitations on how many can be in a polling location at one time. So at one time, there can only be 2 poll watchers from each major political party or candidate. And then again, they have to be a registered voter. And really, they're there to watch the election operations and to call out anything that they see that is wrong. But they're not there to interfere with the process, and they're not there to intimidate voters. So if you experience that from a poll watcher on election day, there's a great hotline you can call, 866-OUR-VOTE, and notify some nonpartisan attorneys that get together and make sure that the elections are running smoothly. So that's the major difference between the two. But those folks, the poll watchers, are really there just to make sure that things are operating as they should be. You will also see sometimes that there are other volunteers outside. But the thing to remember is that electioneering within 100 feet of a polling place is not allowed, and intimidation of voters is never allowed. So those folks, sometimes it will be nonpartisan groups that put out people to help answer last minute questions from voters. Or you could see other folks out there maybe passing out literature, but again, they can't be doing that within 100 feet of a polling location. Next question we had was why I'm not able to vote for or not to retain a judge up for retention. And so some seats are not statewide offices and therefore will only show up on ballots for people who live in the candidates' districts. And I think for judges, this can get confusing because they're not statewide races. And also, the districts do not uniformly follow municipal or county boundaries. So you may have a circumstance where the candidate is not on your ballot, but they might be on the ballot of a voter in the same county as you. But again, they're not. Judges' districts don't follow municipal or county boundaries to a T. So that may happen from time to time. And of course, if you believe you are in a candidate's district at any time, you can contact the local election authority and make sure there's not an error with your ballot. Can I take pictures of my ballot? And simple answer is no. In Illinois, it's a felony to take a picture of your ballot. Instead, we recommend that you take a picture with your I voted sticker or wristband. And just in these cases, it's better to be safe than sorry. So really don't pull out your phone and try to take pictures while you're in the polling place. You don't want to make other voters feel uncomfortable and worried about if they're being photographed. So once you get done voting, get out of the polling location and then take a picture with your I vote sticker or your wristband, or if you're voting by home, do the same thing. Just it's better safe than sorry, and stay away from taking pictures with your ballot. I think this is our last question of the evening, and it is, does my employer have to give me time off to go vote on election day? And in Illinois, your employer is required to give you 2 hours unpaid time off to go vote when the polls are open. There are a few caveats to when that 2 hours happens. So the employer is not required to give 2 hours if the employee has at least 2 hours before or after work to vote. The employee must provide notice before election day, and the employer can specify which hours the employee takes off. My recommendation to folks, if you're concerned you won't have time, if you can't do vote by mail, can't get in early, and you're going to need to vote on election day during work hours, is to go ahead and talk to your employer and try to work out an arrangement so you can cast your vote. And that was all the questions that we had submitted to us before today. So I would recommend folks take a look at additional resources to them. The State Board of Elections website has a lot of great information. It can help you figure out where to go to get to your election authority, find your local election authority's information. You can figure out where your early voting locations are, where election day polling locations are, information on vote by mail. And also, if you have more questions, you can always email us at info@changeil.org. Or you can go to our voting page at changeil.org/vote. And then another great source I mentioned earlier tonight was the 866-R-VOTE hotline. It's an election protection hotline. They're nonpartisan attorneys that are there to help voters make sure they can cast their vote this year in the election. So if you take nothing else from today, make sure you have that number when you're going in to vote, because you'll definitely want it if you find yourself in a situation where you're not sure what you should be doing. And then, of course, always follow us on social media, Twitter @changeil or @changeil. Facebook is Change Illinois, as well as our LinkedIn. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And if you have follow-up questions, make sure to email us.